last few classes that we have. Okay, there was the question of how am I going to grade the final project, and my answer was because this class has a co-requisite with of cisp363, so the expectation out of this class is really just that you can make an interactive app with buttons and other type of elements, and be able to manipulate some kind of data structure in the back end, so that when you do something on the screen, it is changing some kind of data structure in the back end, which in return updates something else on the screen. That's basically what I'm really looking for. So it doesn't hurt to take a look at the learning objective, the SLO of this class. This is one of the things that they keep pushing these days. I'm pretty sure in many of your other classes, you would have heard about that term. How many people have heard of that term, the SLO, or the student learning outcome?
Yeah.
Okay, this is one of the things that they have been pushing in the syllabus of classes. So if we take a quick look at the student learning outcome, it should be in the syllabus, because that's where they want everybody to put all that stuff. So in the syllabus, if you scroll down to the first page, one of the first items, the student learning outcome of this particular class is one, to develop procedural logic for mobile applications. So that's awfully vague, but basically what that means is you have to be able to use conditional statements, loops, and so on and so forth to handle some kind of stuff that you need to do. Okay, and I'm pretty sure I have seen at least all of the projects that you guys have done in the class right now. I don't think you have anything to worry about. Okay.
It's for everyone.
The second one is to synthesize object-oriented class structure to organize components of mobile applications. So if you have to specialize a particular class, main activity counts too, because you have to do quite a bit of work to override onCreate and a whole bunch of other stuff too. So that kind of meets that requirement. Evaluate correctness and efficiency of mobile applications. If you turn in an app that doesn't work, yes, I will take points off.
What does doesn't work mean?
Doesn't work means it does not meet what you claim that thing is supposed to do.
So that contract that we set up earlier, was that a contract for ourselves?
Well, unless you change that, I mean, you can change it, to match the actual behavior of the app. What I will not accept is
launch this screen.
What I would not accept is this program is supposed to crash. This is documented. That would not work. Okay. But you can change the specification and make minor tweaks.
Part of the program is supposed to crash.
I have an app that wants to print up this message that says this app unfortunately stopped working. Click OK.
So analyze programming problems. This one I cannot really assess. Formulate object-oriented solutions to mobile programming problems, which is kind of the same thing as the first one. This is rather silly, because they're looking for these words. Okay, this is called a Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, which is a very, very old style way of evaluating whether a class is emphasizing on logic analysis and whatnot. Identify various types of processes on a mobile platform. I think most of your apps do not use a secondary thread. How many people use a secondary or even more threads in your program? Okay. So that might be useful, but it's really a much more advanced topic than someone from cisp360 can really handle. Design mobile app that utilizes the user interface. I got a button.
It's okay. This app intentionally stopped working.
Well, in your case, you don't even have a button, right? Your app doesn't rely on a button. It relies on the positioning and the movement in order to trigger the operations.
I derive my button from app button.
Okay.
And then I throw it in a layout that was built from linear layout right now, and I know that I'm going to change that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's all the same things. Instead of inflating it, you just do the work yourself.
So as a result, I don't think I want to go for a final exam for this class, because the way you guys wrote your app is different. Okay, so I cannot really I don't want to test that. instead, final exam time, I think we can do a presentation. Just go ahead and tell your class, what your app is going to do, what kind of, tricky stuff you have done in order to make it work, and so on and so forth. How it is applicable, who's going to use it, that sort of thing. So you just basically get about 15 minutes of time to quote unquote sell your app to a potential, audience.
Take the berating questions back at you.
Potentially, I don't think this class
How does
is
this
going to
work?
have a loadout of questions. So that's kind of the plan for the rest of the semester. Basically troubleshooting, answering questions. We got one question earlier of how do we interrupt the playback of an audio clip, right?
Yeah.
And be able to restart it from the beginning. I think I found the corresponding page for that. And I myself, have been trying to work with, something that you might be interested is to use a frame layout so that you can have multiple views in layers. So this way, you can have a background layer for the background of whatever your game has, as a background, and it can scroll independently. And then you have your foreground, and then your projectile, your layer, and so on and so forth. So this way, when you need to redraw something, you don't need to redraw the whole thing. You just say, oh, this projectile, this missile has moved from this location to this location. Clear that layer, redraw the new position of the missile, and you're done. Everything else, stays put unless they need to be changed. Now, if you use a surface view, it's even better. It's even more interesting because now you can attach multiple threads, one to each layer. So you can have one thread to control the background scrolling, one to control the main character moving around, and one to control the actual missile flying around. So a lot of options available. So I'm in the process of testing that right now.
So you think a surface view might be more flexible?
It would give you the capability of having multiple threads to kind of work with multiple layers. That is what a surface.
Android video architecture, and it'll explain the surface layer, the texture view, and the threads.
What was it again?
It's an Android video architecture.
Video architecture.
Pretty sure it's that one. No, not that one.
This one?
No, it's going to be from Android. Graphics architecture then, or something.
Okay. The graphics sounds more. There we go. Graphics architecture. But this is a AOSP, which is actually
Android open source.
the underlying portion of the commercial Android. So that might actually be correct as well.
Yeah, I think
Yep, that's it. What every
that's it.
developer should know about Surface,
Yeah.
Surface Holder, Surface View, Surface Texture, and so on.
Okay. And what's really cool on this one is Vulkan, which is the Spear 5 GPU language or something. So
Vulkan. Cool. All right.
I guess it goes against Apple's. What are they using? Not Chrome. That would be
What?
horrible. Apple was using
For what?
the new graphics architecture.
So this is the brief
yeah.
explanation of what is Vulkan. Vulkan is a low overhead cross-platform API for high-performance 3D graphics. Like OpenGL, Vulkan provides tools for creating high-quality real-time graphics in application. Vulkan advantages include reduction in CPU overhead and support for cisp363 binary intermediate language. So is that the language that you were talking about?
It's more direct to the GPUs now than the old OpenGL. OpenGL, in comparison, would be like yesterday's sprites,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then this one would be more like today's.
Like 3D model.
Yeah, it's let's give it to the hardware. Don't do it in software.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
It's fun to play
Spur
with
is
Vulkan.
a language, or at least a part of it is a language. Okay, the first open standard intermediate language for parallel computing and graphics. So it is a language, it's a specification for a particular programming language with a specialization on parallel computing and graphics. Many years ago when I was in graduate school, I think this is like the second year in graduate school, they actually had a class that talks about how to write code that has parallelism in it. and how do you validate those kinds of programs when you have parallelism. So that was my first exposure to programming languages that is by design friendly to parallel processing. And obviously I cannot remember the programming language back then. It's probably not even existent, at this point. But there were people talking about these type of things in the past, but they never really got any real attention. They never got traction commercially. Can anyone guess why that is the case?
Proprietary.
Because, yeah, go ahead.
There's no network processing like that.
Well, the original idea of parallel processing is, in order to get more processing power, we can just, daisy chain or hook up, all of these processors together, and then we can have, more processing power in the same or similar housing of a regular computer. So that has always been the reason why people want to investigate parallel processing. If you only have one single processor and then you can only execute one thread at a time, having a programming language that can express parallelism is pointless because it is all pseudo anyway, right? And then you have to add the overhead on top of what needs to be done because now you need the overhead to pretend that it is all in parallel. So it's actually it's making things slower, if anything. Okay, so why do you think it never got any traction back in the 90s, but now these days people were jumping on it and go like, yes, we need something like that. What changed?
Multi-cores.
Multi-core and GPU design. Back in those days, when people, when the architecture people, the people who actually design processors, propose and go like, oh, we want to do some research on parallel processing, guess what? Intel would release the next processor design faster than these graduate students can succeed in making a parallel architecture. So basically you just go buy a new chip or new motherboard and you get more processing power than hooking up 4 of those older processors together. So there's no point in doing it, back in those days, okay? But we have kind of changed the whole thing now because of massive networking resources, okay? Networking back in those days is 10 megabits per second. And we are not even talking about hooking everything up to a switch. We are talking about a multi-drop, what do you call those cables? It's called a coaxial, the coaxial cable. So when you have network collision, when somebody is hogging the network, it degrades the performance of the entire network exponentially.
It's one shared media.
Yes, because it is a true multi-drop mechanism. Physically, it's multi-drop. Okay, if you have 2 Ethernet devices trying to talk at the same time, they can detect the collision. Collision detection is one of the main features of Ethernet. But the problem is, how do you resolve that collision? They both back off randomly, and then retry. With an increasing time. Yep. So the performance of a network when you have saturation, it doesn't just degrade, it degrades really, really badly. Okay? And that's why IBM had a token ring design. Token ring is one of the best designs back in those days with multi-drop because you just have a token. You got a token, you get to talk. Okay, pass the token, you get to talk. Pass the token, I get to talk, and so on. So even though it involves a little bit more management issues and stuff like that, it is eventually a very predictable type of a networking topology. As network traffic increases, you can actually plot a curve that is reasonable and say that network is degrading, but it's reasonable. Okay, there's nothing we can do about that part. But with Ethernet, it degrades so badly and non-deterministically that it was not really useful. So when you try to hook up multiple computers and workstations, using those multi-drop Ethernet mechanism and say, oh, we'll do parallel processing, and then these processors will communicate through Ethernet, it's not going to fly. we did not have the infrastructure for proper inter-processor communication back in those days. And then technology was still advancing by shrinking your transistor size. We can increase the speed of processors. So instead of going for multiple processors, multiple core, you just shrink the die, you just shrink the transistor size, and that gives you all the performance gain. It gives you the performance gain faster than hooking up computers in a parallel fashion. And that's why parallel programming languages for parallelism never got traction in the 90s.
I think you were learning CSP.
CSP? It's one of
language.
the.
It was called common or no co-process. It was a co-processor with something language. I remember. Came out that you probably learned Algol, and Pascal, and the Simula, and this was the one for.
Well, I can remember the name of the professor. This is in Davis, parallel processing. So this is the best I can go with. JR, that might be just JR.
Oh, he wrote his own.
Yep. Yep, he wrote his own. So the JR programming language extends Java. No, it wasn't Java based. So this must have come later compared to when I was a graduate student.
Yeah, look at parallel CSP. I'm testing my brain now. Communicating semantic processes.
No, it wasn't communicating, so much that the language itself supports the expression of parallelism. But I think it's JR. This may be, okay, must be SR, okay, because SR is the predecessor of JR. The J in the JR is from Java. So they basically ported all the concepts of SR in order to make it work in Java. So SR stands for Synchronizing Resources. It's a language for writing concurrent programs. And this is not based on any known, common programming languages at the time, because it was kind of really a custom, programming language at the time. So if we look at the documentation, it should be pretty old, like 95. That's about the right time frame. Actually, by 95, I graduated already. So if you roll back, 5 more years, that's about the time when I took that class. So this is the historical aspect of parallel processing and the programming language to express parallelism. But these days,
CSP.
CSP?
Yeah, go back. It's like 1970 something.
Is it 70?
Yeah, they had monitors and mutexes, synchronization, but they didn't have anything called a processor. I mean, they were nowhere anything near, concurrency. So yeah, it was.
Okay. Okay. This looks like something that Apple would actually adopt.
No, it was really coarse. It was really coarse.
Mm.
I mean, this you have to remember, they didn't have anything. We didn't know what we were going to get into. People only assumed things like critical sections.
Well, I guess the computers at the time were not multitasking, so they're all mainframes with scheduled jobs. So you do one job at a time, so they never really run into problems like scheduling issues or
They were still
synchronization.
batching back then. But
Yeah.
they were. I mean, the concepts were being evolved, and we're stuck with those today. At least they dumped the monitor concept in. Didn't like that one.
Well, monitors are equivalent to all the other mechanisms for synchronization. The only thing is it easy to use, but it has the same ability to synchronize processes as any other things like semaphores or mutexes and whatnot. Okay, cool. So this is the new standard, first open standard for parallel compute and graphics. And in this case, Vulkan is the API to enable. Okay, include reductions in CPU overhead and support. So I'm not really sure what they mean when they say support for the intermediate language.
Yeah, you might just change the thing into a screensaver or something. And then just or do something with the touch and the screensaver, and the whole thing becomes a whole different kind of a game, and you take out the whole logic backend. And you still get advanced in, state management and, and then if you can make it through, you'd learn a lot kicking over a GPU.
In fact, this may be something, because it's relatively not common at this point, and it takes a long time for universities to adopt anything that is new. Okay? So that means if you learn this now, by the time you want to look for employment, you will have a distinct edge over students graduating from, say, Davis, Berkeley, any one of those bigger UCs.
Because they all have
MIT.
OpenGL.
Hmm?
They'll all have OpenGL.
Oh, they're all heavy OpenGL and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
resistant to changes. They don't just go out and go like, oh, let's see what's new and let's change our things every single day. They do not have that mentality. Or I should say, people with that mentality do not survive as professors at those UCs. And as a result, students who graduate from UCs, they will have a strong theoretical backend, understanding of the stuff. But in terms of being, on target in terms of, oh, this is what people use now, or this is on the horizon. This is something that people will be using in the next 2 months. They are completely in the dark. So that's your advantage, right there.
Hell, they
Yeah, I
don't
might
even
just
know
keep
about it.
studying this even after class is over.
I had a buddy who's in the UC system. They don't even know about Vulkan.
The first time I saw it was in the new Doom. That was the first one I saw it used.
Yeah.
It's new.
Oh yeah, it's I think it only became official last year.
It's probably a little
It's
bit
been
rough.
more-
I mean, it's
oh,
like
it's-
anything you get started with. I mean, it's going to be a little
Listen,
bit rough.
statements.
But
I tried to use it on a
if you
project.
really dive in, and if it's the kind of thing you like, and if you're good at math,
It's
are you good at math?
supposed to be easier than
Right.
I haven't taken too
OpenGL.
many math classes though, that's not a problem. I'm not that far in the learning curve. But I can learn it pretty easy.
Well, there's different components of
And
it.
you can even
play
fake
with.
it. I mean, you need to know a particular algorithm for one part. You can Google it nowadays. But I was playing.
But you'll find it in OpenGL, and then you might be able to translate
Convert it.
somehow
Yeah.
into.
Some of it's supposed to be able to
I
convert.
mean, if you were
easily
looking for
to-
things in OpenGL, you just find them. And you just Google them. Here's a sample, plug.
Yeah.
You can pick up on that pretty quick. This one would be more like,
It takes a little
let's
bit.
draw a line in a box and turn it into a 3D hypercube. Let me see if I can add some shades to the edges of it.
Yeah, there's times where it looks like. Have you seen any of those comments where it's like, oh, he's supposed to teach you how to draw, and it's like circle, circle, and then the next image is the complete drawing. And it's like you're supposed to be able to jump from this to that. That's kind of how some of the Vulkan tutorials feel right about now.
Well, because they're written by people who are very, well versed. They're written by developers,
Yeah.
and when developers, someone who has a very strong knowledge about the subject matter, when they write, they would leave holes in the document.
Oh yeah.
Because they would not be able to detect the holes. They go like, it makes sense to me. Go from point 1, point 2, point 3, with 99 points missing in between. They would still go like, it makes sense to me. Because they
What are you
already
talking about?
knew all that stuff by the time they were writing it, right?
Yeah.
So they have to be, all documentation really should be tested by someone who kind of know about the general subject matter, because you cannot just give it to somebody who has an English background and say, oh, see if this is okay. The English person is going to look at this whole thing and just, everything is like that, right? So if it has missing something, it doesn't register. It has to be somebody who knows about programming, but not that specific
Someone
topic.
in the air.
Yeah, in the early days of user interface, I think they used to have like rooms, and you would bring your software to these people to them, and they would be, application virgins. And so what they would do then at that moment is how you would have to figure out how people were going to use your software.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we didn't know where people were going. I mean, we came from command lines to.
Well, even today, command line is still the tool that I prefer to use.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I can tell that my colleagues, my peers, over here, are not, command line based. Many of those people, even the people who are supposed to teach networking classes, operating system classes, and whatnot, they're much more GUI oriented these days than I would assume otherwise.
And you lose something when you have a GUI. I mean.
But you
they
lose the
try.
ability to automate.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
But there's so many more options I've noticed on software,
Well,
especially
if
the networking tools, where it's like, okay, here's all the options in the terminal, and here's the subset in the GUI.
Well, if I had an Android Studio for my shell, every time I started typing things, it was letting me know. I have to say I am incredibly impressed with Android Studio.
You might try. There's a shell called Fish, and it kind of is similar in that respect.
Hinting.
By the time
Yeah.
by the time it says my code is done, it runs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I will look at it, it gives you hints about variables you aren't using, you know, as you start doing your refactoring, you can clean
So-
things up
oh,
completely,
yeah.
declare your objects. Once all of the visuals are nicely taken care of, you know, you're connected for the most part. I mean, you might have forgot to initialize something if you.
Well, it
in the
is
right place,
necessary
you
in
did
the
something
case,
dumb,
but that is necessary in the case of Android programming because there's so much stuff in the API in the class hierarchy that if you're spending all your energy to even just do the editing stuff, you wouldn't have any spare juice to deal with what really matters.
I can't. I mean, I was working on one area in the linear layouts. I declared a linear layout,
Mhm.
and then I reinitialized the object because I wanted to put another one below it.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't used it yet. Visually, it still tells you it's still an unused
Because it's gray,
thing.
yeah.
At this,
Mhm.
I mean, the old days we used to use
Which
a
is
text
nice
editor, which
because-
was
oh
just,
God, yeah.
you know, it was just plain. Today, it's incredible what you can do.
I still
and how
use
fast
GCC
you
dash
can do it.
warn all, to spot variables that are declared but not used, initialized but not used but not initialized, and so on and so forth. So I still use command line tools
yeah.
and then go back line by line and deal with those things.
You can see it visually in this thing, though.
Yeah,
That's what
I know.
I'm
I
saying, as
do
you
wish
type it.
they had a small delay on that, or at least a setting where I could set a delay. Because it gets annoying when I'm like trying to type the code and it's like, hey, this variable's not used. I'm like, yes, I'm still trying to declare it.
You can
Yeah,
turn it
like-
off. You can go to the
I
power
like
saving
it.
mode
You
and turn
just
it
need
back
a
on.
faster computer.
No, I just need to type faster.
Type slower. Yeah. Okay, so the answer to the question of how do you start and stop or pause a media, this is the state diagram, which is one of the best and simplest way to describe, okay, what do you do to get from one state to another state. So after the prepared state, you can get to the start state, and the started state is when the audio or the media is being played. So you can transition into the paused mode where you can resume as far as I understand, you don't want to resume it, you just want it to
I
stop.
want to cut it, yeah.
Okay, so you want to go to the
start
stopped state from the start state.
Okay.
So between these two states, the only edge that can make this connection is the stop method. So what you need to do is to call the stop method. So that will put the media player into the stopped mode.
Right.
And once it is in the stopped mode, you can go back to prepared by calling prepare the method. You can also go to prepare async to go back to here, and then use on prepared listener on prepared to go back to prepared.
Okay.
Or you can just set the position and hit play.
I tried that using the
Seek
Seek
to.
2,
Yep. Mhm.
and all it does is it just adds another. It just
But-
keeps adding more copies of that audio to the playing. It doesn't actually stop it.
But if one is already playing, that is not gonna stop what is already playing.
Yeah, I want to stop
Yeah,
what's
you want to
playing.
use the same object. You're probably using an object locally inside the procedure or something, and then
Yeah, I
you're
have the
starting up
media
another
player.
one, and then starting up another one.
I want to stop the one that's currently playing and then start
Right.
over.
Yeah, so you have to use the stop method to bring it from the started state to the stopped state. And then in the stopped state, you get a few options because you want to
You
restart
could
it, right?
just immediately seek to.
Not from this diagram.
Yeah, from the started to seek to.
No, it's
From stopped,
no.
you can.
You wanted to restart it, right?
Yeah.
No, this seek to is
Is
from
on
started back to started.
Well, it's anywhere in it. It's anywhere in it.
Anywhere.
Yeah, so, I mean, and I know because I can play, right? I can seek to plus 10. Go back 5. So I've got like back 5. All I'm doing is hitting seek to.
Huh.
So I'm playing, and you can seek to the beginning if you want to.
Would
But
that
I'm
be
ready.
seek
I'm ready to.
to-
I'm ready to. And the reason. Let me explain what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I'm prepping for the student to be studying, and he wants to keep hearing what it is. I don't want him to have to slide or do anything, so they can quickly just when they're looking at the image, they can just quickly back up 5 seconds or 10 seconds, or you know, wherever they want, or when they slide to the right picture, I hope I get to that part, slide to the right picture, then I'll cue the audio at like
To
5
that
seconds
point.
before. So every time you take a picture, you get to hear what the instructor was saying. And,
Yeah.
you know, and capture, you know, so when they explained it,
as it's
that's
playing-
the picture you get.
So as it's playing, you can do the seek to.
Right,
So what I'm doing is while it's playing, right?
which is in the
Yeah.
started state.
I can just go forward 5 seconds, back 5 seconds.
So you should, because I have a copy of it on here.
Oh, okay, so you got buttons to do this.
Yeah, this is
And
the
you're
one.
using a seek to.
I just hit C2.
Okay,
So
but-
here's pause.
But what
Right,
this
and
program
you
is
can
doing
continue.
is it is still in the started state, and when you're in the started state,
Yeah.
you
I
can
don't
use
care.
C2 to go back to the started state. So once it is started, you can use
I can just
C2.
go, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. I don't care if it does it.
Okay, so because I misunderstood your original objective, I thought you wanted to stop it and then replay, something else. But
that
you're.
would be another option because I want to be able to have multiple. It's going to be for a soundboard app,
Mhm.
so I want to have it where I can, if the current is playing, if it's the same thing, just restart it. Otherwise, go to that, stop that current sound and go to the new one.
I
Well,
see.
actually, I think you've stumbled onto something cool. Why don't you just play multiple sounds at the same time?
Because that's not the intended
I mean-
feature. I mean, it sounds cool after a while.
I mean, now you just have some sort of a blending audio mode. All you do is cue them both up at the same time.
I can see how Johann Sebastian Bach will really like this in his two-part inventions, right?
Yeah.
What does seek to take for
An offset.
an offset?
Yeah, a delta one way or the other. And if you go beyond the beginning, it
So,
cues to the beginning.
so if I hit C2, if I just put 0, it's not going to.
You won't go anywhere. I think you stay relative to where you're at.
So it takes two
I know
arguments.
there's
I don't know
two.
why this is
There's
all
two
gray.
C2s.
Why is it
I think
all?
Oh, because you're in Android O developer preview somehow. You have to go to hit the 3-button menu right under your mouse, and you should be fine at API 25.
Should be.
We'll change it to 24. It's in there since version 1, so it should be fine.
Yeah.
There's two Seek2s.
Yeah, I think you're using the one that's got the mode. It wants the.
This is Android O.
Yeah, if you go up or down, I think you're gonna hit the next one or something.
Oh, up in the top right,
Hmm?
where it says API 24. Is that what you're saying?
I think you just
Try
need to scroll
read-
down. It's the one right after that
Oh,
one.
it's the one right after.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we go.
there's two- Yeah.
And this is API level 1,
That's-
so it
yeah.
only takes a millisecond. The
So you
number
go
of
forwards and
milliseconds.
backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because
I
it's
was
signed.
reading it wrong.
Yeah, because it is
I was
signed.
thinking if it's that one Seek2, it would be because I didn't read that the
So
part
if you put
underneath.
negative in there, it'll go left.
Yeah.
Or earlier in the button.
Yes, and if you go positive, you go forward.
Forward.
And you can actually change the speed of stuff if you wanna get tweaky.
Yeah.
You know that. When making a soundboard, that'd be kind of fun. Or-
Yeah, there was a. I'm making this because there was a request for it on Reddit from the show that I've been listening to, Hello from the Magic Tavern, and some people wanted a soundboard of some of the sayings. So I'm like, I can do this. And then I started programming. And I'm like, nope. Ran into this issue. Let's see if we can figure it out.
You can mix both of your apps together, and you know how you can loop sounds together and everything, and then you can loop back and then you can play the sounds and you can make like a whole remix.
So then I
Yeah,
need
programmatically, just
Program
save,
remix.
just save the seek tubes,
Yeah.
right? And a little
So
bit of
then-
a delta window time, and so all
So
of a
how
sudden
are
you
you
build this
getting it to
beatbox.
Yeah. So how are you getting the current location? Because I want to be able to do. I guess I'd have to do current
Oh, yeah,
location
current
minus the current location. Is
Do
there
what?
to get back to 0?
Well, yeah, you could figure out how long the file is in file length and ping that.
Well,
I
how
mean,
are
if you go
doing
beyond
to-
it, it'll only go to the beginning.
Oh, so
You go
okay.
File length to minus that, and it'll go to the beginning.
It'll just go to the beginning. Okay, that works.
Well, let's find out what methods it
Now,
supports.
how do I did that is what I do is I just programmatically, I create a button that said, okay,
Right.
good, let's load the audio, let's start it, let's stop it, let's seek to, and from there
But how
I
are you
play.
getting the current location in order to like back it up 5 seconds?
Well, it's seek to relative.
Yeah, it's
It
relative,
is.
so he just gives it 5,000.
So 5,000 is 5 seconds forward, negative 5,000, 5 seconons backwards,
Right.
negative file
Oh,
size
you're
to the
not
beginning.
getting to the, okay.
He doesn't need those locations.
I don't need to know, okay.
I mean, just cheat sheet.
Yeah, you go. I just
You
use
could probably just seek to negative max in,
Yeah.
without caring about the length of the file.
Yeah, I don't really need to care. I just need to get it back to the.
Well, this may get to the length part, I'm not sure. Get track info. Because you want to know how long the whole track is, right?
Yeah. if I don't want to just use the fixed.
Yeah, I think it's in this one.
Is it? Well, it returns track info, and track info is a class for multimedia player to return each audio, video, subtitle track's metadata. And it has got constants, got public methods, get format.
That's funny, it's not metadata,
Yeah,
technically, right?
yeah, it doesn't.
It's actual data, the real length, it's not
Yep.
a description of the length, it's.
Right.
Yeah, I saw one in there, which is, I can get the length, it's in, the audio, which is, I think there's a class called audio, cause I just derived my audio from audio.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, I think is where it was.
Okay. So you guys can figure it out.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not playing someone else's clips, I'm playing the clips I record.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess I gotta first figure
I
out.
could totally see a beatbox now. It's starting to grow.
Yes. Class project. This is our final class project.
Now you bring the recorder around, you record odd sounds, and then you put them into these little different looping modes, and all of a sudden you become
There you go.
the latest, what is it, 3 people to play one guitar or something?
Oh yeah. 3 people sing a song. Each one says one line.
But
or
they're all
one
playing the
word.
same guitar too.
Yeah, I've never seen that variation.
Oh, get duration.
Yeah.
There it is.
There you go. So get the duration in milliseconds. If no duration is available, -1 is returned. So there you go. So that would get the duration of the media thing that you're trying to play. So that would be,
Yeah.
that might be helpful.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's see. I was trying to show you, how to use a frame layout, so you can have multiple layers. So let me see if I can download that thing, because I was working on the program in my office, but I couldn't get my Android Studio to work because of some kind of because of the way I configured my office computer. My office computer I was trying to update from 32-bit Linux to 64-bit
Oh, yeah.
Linux without having to reinstall everything.
Uh-huh,
And
not
that didn't
gonna
work
work.
very well.
No.
So I'm actually running my live distribution in my office on my office machine. So my usual user account is colliding with the user account, and so Android Studio got a little bit confused. So there are 2
Damn it.
homes. You got 2 homes. Which one do we want to use? So I'm gonna. I'll try it here. Okay, here we go. So now we can start up Android Studio. I think I got it started up already. Just need to find which window it is in. Oh, maybe not. Not today. Yeah, it's interesting because Android Studio does not use the home folder as an anchor point. it uses the name of the user, and then they try to go to /home/ and then that username. That didn't work very well.
There we go.
Okay, so there is an update. Okay, finally there's an update, and it's pretty small. We'll go ahead and do it. Yep, it's all done. Cool. So what we'll do is to open up the project that I was trying to work on, but I wasn't able to run it because my it wouldn't start up a new virtual machine. That's okay. Okay, this one is called draw image, and we'll import build up Gradle.
Will it work? Or are we gonna have a new iteration of the beatbox app? Testing. I can't remember your name.
Keith.
Oh, what is it?
Keith.
Oh, Keith. Yeah, what Keith recommended. Run as fast as you can. Moto. Yeah, there's some interesting changes in the Android Studio 2.4 preview.
But 2.3.1 was stable. It's the most stable platform.
Yes, I've been playing. I have both the stable and the Canary build on my persistence drive here, which isn't like that.
Canary build.
Yeah.
Kinda like how they figure out new names for things as they go around.
Oh wait, I want that.
Are there any questions from anyone else? I mean, yeah, go ahead.
SQLite, my understanding is it creates a file in the app.
It uses a single file associated with your app in the folder under your apps the directory.
And is it accessible to multiple activities?
Is it accessible to?
Like I want to
Yes.
different activities to be able to talk.
Yes, all the activity of the same app, would have access to it, but they would need to have an object. I mean, unless you pass the same reference to of that object around,
But they can open and close it on their own in their own activities, right?
should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keith, can you do
But if you open, okay, but this is the point where it can be a little bit of a problem, because you don't want to have multiple objects of the SQLite database in your program. You only want to have one single object and use that one single object to access the database.
That's what what I was reading is that they use that singleton again.
They use the what?
The singleton, where they only
Okay.
have one copy of the object.
Right.
But basically, I need to be able to control that only one thing can access at a time.
Get to
Correct.
Okay.
What can you rate minus? Shouldn't it? But if it's 10, oh, that's 0.
Okay.
So I just need.
Draw image keeps stopping. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That should work. Crashes. Doesn't even open, it just crashes.
Yeah, that was my app. It's like, that puts up a dialog box with a button in it. I derived from activity.
It's not. Don't need to. Maybe because my player is not initialized. It's not.
This is what I did a seek relative. I didn't get the current position.
Draw image keeps stopping.
Equals-
And it says ADV rejected
I didn't get the
connection.
current position just so I could do an offset.
Yeah.
But
So it may not be the app itself that's the problem. Okay, let's try it with my phone.
first thing I did was I created
We don't have a USB cord for that. Okay, so the idea, is to use frame layout, and then what you do is you add your own views as child or children of the frame layout, and then for each frame, or for each custom view inside your frame layout, you basically draw different things on each one, and then you set up the transparency and also the layering, so that you can have one layer for the background, which is all the way to the back, one layer for other things, so that when you need to redraw something, a particular thing, you only have to redraw it in that particular layer, and then the superimposition of everything is done by the system, so you don't have to redraw the entire thing, including the background and everything else.
So is every view added to it layered on the frame?
Yes. In fact, I had another program that to illustrate just the layering aspect of it. So let me take a look at that one first. Socket, test canvas, test frame layout. I think this is the one. I might have it already on my drive. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, test frame layout.
Is it?
I just want to be a frame layout.
Yeah, so test frame layout, doesn't do any images, but you already know how to load an image into a bitmap, right? And then how to draw the bitmap. So what that means, this one, would be enough to illustrate what the main point. This one uses no, that's not what I want. This is not, I don't think this is what I want, because it's based on the constraint layout. Nope, it's not this one. Close. Test sensor, test timer, 2 screens. I cannot remember which one. Because I wrote one specific app to show how we can change the transparency of 2 different things, and they're layered upon each other.
Yeah, I was looking for the one that did the background service too. I meant to ask.
The backgrounds.
Yeah, the one
surface.
I remember you did one with a service intent, I think, that was in the background, and then we started and stopped it. That's how I want to do my audio recording. I want to kick it off to a service so I can let the screen dim down.
Oh, okay.
I burned 21% of my battery.
So
in
the
2
one
hours
that can
yesterday.
basically have no activity, you can delete, you can remove the activity itself by using the back button, but it has a notification bar thing.
Yeah.
That one, okay.
I couldn't find. And then I think I downloaded.
I think it's random message. That one is random message, because it will keep popping up using the not notifier. They call it toaster. So it would use the toaster to keep popping up new random numbers on the screen,
Right.
but without the activity anymore, and it appears as a little icon on the notification tray.
Okay. it's
That is a
message.
random message. Yep.
Yeah, I was. But there's another one that seems to be an error, and I think it was. If you scroll down just a little bit, if you download it, it's not the right one anymore. I think it's.
2 screens, test timer, test sensors. And we know what test and sensor does because we just used that last time.
Just I downloaded one. I got I used 2 different computers. I have my bigger one, and then I just have this little one. But
Yep.
I downloaded it, and I got back a non-NVA counter is what's inside of the zip file.
Oh. That is odd.
Because I was clicking around trying to. I think it's action. No, I think it's action bar. Yeah.
Action bar?
Yeah. Because I thought it was in the action bar, but when I opened it up.
Action bar is really old. This is in 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was looking for the service. I couldn't remember which one we put it in. I remember we embedded it in some toy.
Okay.
So
Well,
it's random message.
I think it's random message that does that. But I'm trying to show him, how he can use multiple views, in order to put the multiple layers on it. So I just need to make this not as fancy as what I want it to be. Okay. So I think the problem that I have right now is, I'm not getting the bitmap correctly, with Vader. So instead of doing that, I'm just gonna use, canvas.draw, and I think we can just draw the whole background using a draw a RGB. So we can now do the alpha, which is, we can make it half transparent, and then R is, we can use full intensity for all of these. So what this should do is to display something that is half transparent, but because the background is all white, so we wouldn't be able to see anything like that. We'll just go ahead and get rid of one of these. So this way it is red and blue only, so it will be purple, but it will be kind of like a pastel purple because it's showing through the background, which is white. Okay, so this is a good one to test. It only has one single thing first, okay, so we're not gonna go too fancy at this point.
Do you ever have a micro USB?
Hmm?
Do you ever have a micro USB cable?
I might have one.
No, mine right here.
Oh, there you go.
That's the one.
Yeah, my wife's new phone. Oh, it doesn't like it. Draw image has stopped because of the canvas draw a RGB. Maybe because. Do I need to call super on draw with on draw? Nope, it's still stopping.
That's weird.
Programmably, my parent one was a linear layout, so I just changed it to a frame layout. So I'm gonna, hopefully those buttons will be on top of mine.
Yeah, that should do it. Disconnected from the target virtual machine.
Not time for it?
No, it just adds. I thought it was because the.
Well, if it's adding, then it can't be the C2. It's gotta be the way you instantiate the audio. So you're instantiating, then you instantiate again, then you instantiate again.
So then I need to tell it this. Okay. So if. One second. So then.
I'm just having a little bit of a problem with this app
So
here.
then I need to do.
Let me see if I have problems with other apps too, because it might be a setup of the
Release.
So
Android Studio.
I just had to install
last
a bunch
one
of
top.
stuff.
Sorry?
Well, I just had to install a bunch of stuff for the drive anymore.
Okay.
Might be that, I'm not sure about.
We'll test another one that was definitely working in the previous class.
It's definitely last one's on top.
Mm-hmm.
Select track, MP dot 3D pair.
And this one is working, so it's something specific to the other app. So let me see. Open draw image.
Oh wait, I stop it. And MP dot stop. Please select the track again. And then start. Let's try that.
Still doesn't like it. The only thing special about this one is inside the layout, it's using my own constraint. Oh, it's somehow, okay, there we go. So this is my own class, and it's contained inside the constraint layout. So it might be complaining because the constraint is not specified. No, it is fully specified. I know why. No, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, okay, let's see if the constructor is ever called here. Nope. Okay, so the constructor was never called, which means it never found a way to understand that it's layered frame that I want to use. Okay, so that goes back to the layout file. And in the layout file, I specified this is, okay, that's my package name, layered frame. Which, with nothing inside, it just couldn't associate this inside the constraint layout. Okay, let's get rid of this then. So now we should have an empty activity. Okay, so the empty activity, there's no problem with that. But if I add back my own layout, layered frame as a subclass, then it doesn't like it. And this is the constructor of this class. Oh, I know why. Because it is expecting, for anything that can be automatically inflated, it needs the constructor that takes on the context and also a second parameter, which is called the configuration, I think. Okay.
If you hover over the, I think the little.
It's the one that takes on a second parameter.
Attributes or something.
Yeah. Is it attribute set?
I don't know, I don't use it.
Yeah, I think it's called attribute set. Attribute set. There we go. Okay, pretty sure this is the reason, because it needs that in order to work. Because otherwise, when it tries to create an object of this class, it will fail. There we go. So this is the foreground view itself, which is a subclass inside frame layout. So layered frame needs its own. Okay, there we go. You will need this, if you're going to derive a subclass out of a existing class and you want it to be inside your layout, your XML, you will need this in order to do that. So you must not be using the layout to automatically inflate. Is that?
Yeah, that's the XML file, yeah.
Yep, okay.
And now I wrote it in code.
Yep, okay, syntax problem, because I need to use a comma here. There we go. Okay, very good. So now we got that part working. And now we can just draw a RGB with half transparency. So instead of seeing purple as a solid color, we should see a pastel kind of purple, because it's showing through one half of the background color. Nope, it's not showing anything at all. How about just blue then? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wrote one that would do this, but I might have misplaced it. Draw a RGB. Okay, fill the entire canvas bitmap with the specified ARGB color using SR cover ported duff mode. Okay, whatever that is. So I must be missing something else. Draw ARGB. And it's inside on draw.
There you go.
You got it?
Put my buttons on top of my reality.
Ah, using frame layout.
Using the frame layout. And
Yeah.
all I did was change this from my linear layout, which I was instantiating, to my frame layout.
Mm-hmm.
And so, heck with all that code. I mean, I knew what it was. Now I just had to put them in the right order, because I used to have the camera going at the bottom, which was at the top of all the buttons. I didn't want to transparent him.
I see.
And then I just set the frame color to set the background to a new color drawable transparent. And that's what made that linear layout go transparent.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Like, you know how you did the hand, like, when you have your hand close to the thing, or whatever, when you have something blocking it, could you do it from the front side?
What do you mean?
Switch to the front facing camera.
Yeah. It's like
Oh.
you block the front facing camera or something.
What I did is I just turned it off, and what he's referring to is that as I go to sleep, yeah, so when I go to sleep, I turn the camera off, but that doesn't change what's underneath it, and so all of a sudden you can still see my,
I wonder if you
The
get
last
like,
thing.
but like, I wonder if like, you can only have the buttons pop up when your hand's like close to the screen or something. So that like when someone's not,
proximity sensor.
yeah, when someone's just like trying to get something and like they don't really see the buttons, they just see the full picture. I'm not really sure. I don't know if that's.
Oh,
what
you mean
wanna
make
do.
those buttons transparent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
do
can.
that. Yeah, I can totally make those buttons transparent too.
but like when you get your hand close to the screen, then the buttons appear again. Like.
Oh yeah, there's not one of those. That would, if you did that, you would make all the web developers in the world happy.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, their on hover or their mouse overs will work again.
That's pretty sweet. That'd be pretty sweet.
Their mouse overs don't work right now.
Well, okay, so the problem right now is I have an on-draw method that I override in the subview of this particular frame layout. And overriding the on-draw of the parent, which is the container, I want to trigger the on-draw of the embedded class, which is already added as a, oh, never mind, forgot. Okay, fine, okay. Brain fart. Nope, it's still not triggering that coda. Or, oh, syntax error. Okay, there we go. The other one does not need attribute set, so we can get rid of that. And change this to, I was adding the attribute set to the wrong class to begin with, and so this one does not need it. There we go.
I think I have to change to awake mode where, have you guys use the logcat tools? The monitors? Those
Yeah,
are really
it's
cool.
useful.
What?
The monitors on logcat, once you get running.
Okay, so we got it, you know,
Tried
it is
out
now
monkey, yeah.
blue. So see how solid this blue is? Now we can
Very
change the
clean.
transparency to half. And now it should be kind of like a pastel kind of blue because it's showing the background white through half of it. Okay, let's get rid of this breakpoint. So now it's kind of half, you know, blue. Okay, so now what we can do is to create more of these subclasses, and the other one is I can just make it red. Okay, so copy, paste, and we'll change this one to the background. There we go, and we'll change the background one, background view, oh, open paren. We'll change the background to red. Okay. And you have to add the background first. Now, when you use add view, you can actually use one of these things here, so you can actually control the index of what you're adding. So instead of using the implicit order of we are adding from the back to the front, you can actually change you can specifically say this one has to go here instead of just relying on the implicit order. So that answers your question of
So leave some room.
Hmm?
Well, basic programmers, you had to count by 10, so you could add another line in there, 15. Okay. Then you could add 12 and 11, and then you had to renumber the whole thing.
That's real basic there. Yep. They had tools in the older basic interpreters to renumber lines too.
Well, yeah, the tool came along. They probably wrote it basic.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch how the world spun up on top of itself. For example, like the C compiler is written in C. I mean,
Not the first one.
Well, I know, that's what I'm saying. The technology has to spin itself up,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we've actually built ourselves on the shoulders of the things that came before.
Yep. But something has to start first.
It's all turtles all the way down.
Well, somebody has to start programming using switches first.
Or mechanical.
The Altair computer is all switches and LEDs. No assembler, no C programming language, it's all switches. Which location, which address do you want to program? Flip, 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 flip. What is the content at that address? Flip, 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 flip.
No,
And then
it's flip, 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 examine, deposit. No, that's the other toggle, two toggles, which
Yep.
is just to examine memory, and it gives it back to you in a light pattern.
So there we go, that works. So, the Vader image is all the way in the back, and then the foreground is actually in the foreground, but it's half transparent. So that's why it is appearing a little bit with a blue tint to it.
So instead of having to redraw everything, I'll just redraw the bitmap when I
Yep.
want to move it. So that's good work as well.
Yep, there you go. So you can set up the transparency. Whenever you draw something, you can use the paint to specify the transparency. Depending on where you get your bitmap, if it's a PNG bitmap, you can specify transparency in your PNG bitmap. If it's a JPEG, there's no transparency representation in a JPEG. So you have to be careful what kind of image format you use in order to import into your bitmap.
Almost always use PNG because like the photo editor I have it set to just open PNG images like on.
Okay. Yeah, then you should be okay. I'm pretty sure this engine can take care of transparency inside the bitmap. So that will give you a bit of flexibility of how you can kind of separate the control of the background from the control of the objects from the control of the projectile. Yep.
Does it play animated GIFs?
I don't know. I do not.
Because you
know.
might want to not poo-poo PNG. I mean, for what you want to do, you could do an animated GIF, and then you don't have to worry about it. You could just move that around the screen.
Instead of also have to take into consideration this is the next costume, the next costume. Well, we call it costume because this is a term that I borrowed from the MIT, not App Inventor, the other one that is web-based programming, Scratch.
Yes.
Yeah, in Scratch you can have sprites, and then sprites can have costumes. So by changing the costume in a certain time, with a certain time interval, it would appear that you have some kind of animation with the sprite.
Yeah, so if you're going to do it on a frame rate, that would work best, right? Because every frame you select the right costume.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe every 10 frames for this one, every.
Yep. So that would give you some idea of how to enhance make your game a little bit easier to write, because now you don't need to redraw everything every time you update something.
Before I was like, whoa.
Please exit the main UI thread to draw. You can't draw anywhere but in the main UI thread.
Well, with the concept of a surface view, that makes it possible because you can have something in the background to update it. And I think I wrote a program to use the background task or background thread to update a surface view. Of course, I cannot remember where that is.
I think if you look at your notes, the notes of your class,
Yeah.
That's how I was trying to find it as I was going through it.
Okay.
Because I definitely want to start mine up as a service. I need to leave it running and let the whole
Platform as a
device.
service.
Although,
Is the one-
I think I'm going to turn the sensor off because I'm monitoring.
Yeah.
The one you just got running, did you put that up in the?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I can put it up now. The one that's online doesn't work. It had to do with the constructor of my custom frame layout subclass
No.
does not have the proper constructor, so that's why it won't start. Yeah. But I can upload the one that I have right now.
So for the final presentation, if we sent you our code already, could we present the code too? Because it's about code, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I said, a little bit
Because
earlier.
I built these little mini classes as I've come along. So as I conquer everything, I just save it for my arsenal. Because the old contractors of yesteryear used to carry, this is really bad, but they used to carry cards in their trunks. I mean, because there's only a handful of programmers around, and so they would do a bubble sort subroutine or whatever they had, and then they'd take those cards and they'd use them and wherever they had to go. So there's I use a program called Snippets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Little code snippets, so when I find my little
Yeah.
favorite
That was
flavors,
fun.
I
Yeah.
throw them
okay.
into my working piles.
Yeah, now they call them like GIS or something like that on like GitHub or something.
Well, just I
There's
think
like-
aren't
yeah,
they
there's
the
code
change
snippets.
logs or something?
No, those are just code snippets.
Code snippets.
It's a
Yeah.
web resource, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
on
I know
GitHub
which
and
one you're
a
talking
lot of
about.
I took an app down which was just watching all the GIS, and then whenever I was bored, I just refresh, and all these things are flying in. You just keep looking at all these different ways people write code. Something to do when you're, when birds are so angry. It's always floating. It comes right off of GitHub or something. It's just constant.
Okay.
Definitely bookmark anything you like because it's gone.
Okay, so it's there now. Drawimage.zip, which is the one that we just saw. Now it is online. Pretty sure I use one particular one that uses a background thread to update a surface view. And I cannot remember which one it is. Test frame layout, no. Test timer, could be test timer. But that was one that I did it. So it must have a new thread. Oh, I can do this. Okay. So we can do a grab recursive uppercase thread and just do it that way.
Old school.
But if you cannot remember anything, this is better than nothing.
That's a huge directory.
Now I haven't. This is starting from the home directory because I didn't put all my projects into subfolders, into the Android project, Android Studio project subfolder. So I have to basically search everywhere. This might take a while. Okay, as it is going through this, this is not really application programming related and whatnot. But if you have taken a personality test, it is really helpful in many ways because it will help you understand, what you're good at and what you may not be very good at. So you can kind of choose an occupation and do something that you're really, really good at, and just kind of keep in mind what may be limiting your growth, and that is really helpful to me.
Although if it tells you you're not very good at writing, you might think you should use a computer because you're good at for typing. But then when you figure out you're not good at typing, it still doesn't mean you're not going to be a good programmer. It just means you're going to have a lot of errors in typing. So you have to be really careful with those personality tests.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can't you just get married if you want to find out what you're not good at? I mean,
Then you have to choose your mate correctly. That's the thing, okay? So this is a website, it's just simply called 16personalities.com. It will ask you for an email address if you want to get a detailed result, for yourself. It is free, okay? But it will tell you not that you're just, ESTP or something like that, but it will give you percentages, like how far you're leaning to one side. Because some people are only like 51% versus 49%, so they're pretty even. And then some people are all the way over to one side instead of, like just leaning, one way. So this is
a serious J and a minor I. I'm a serious J, but a minor I.
Yes, something along that line. I'm actually very, leaning to T and very leaning to the P. So I'm TP strong, but IN is kind of like, just kind of borderline, a little bit leaning on that side.
I'm in the weird group. I'm the INTJ.
INTJ.
It's like 7% of us or something, or out of the 16. Or
I got 3%.
Yeah, 3%, something like that.
Yeah, INTP is only 3%, which is basically telling you that, evolutionary speaking, it is not very fit.
It doesn't work for mating.
Yeah, because INTPs tend to be living in their head, thinking about all the theoretical stuff. So when you're walking in the jungle, that may not be a very good thing to do. Theoretically speaking, I think a tiger will take at least 0.65 seconds to get to me, and here it comes. Let me time it. Okay, yep, my theory was right. So that's why, but this is an interesting test. I have a friend who's also INTJ, and INTJ, and INTPs, even though they only differ by one single letter, when it comes to work habits and whatnot, they cannot be more different. In casual conversation, they can be very compatible, and they just kind of mesh real well. But when it comes to work habit, it's entirely different. INTPs are the ultimate procrastinators.
I jump out there really fast.
Exactly.
But our thinking techniques are the same.
But
so we both think through it similarly, but you
Yep.
take your time to go through it, and I'm like, I'm jumping.
I'm just interested
jumping
in
feet
understanding
first.
something. I'm not interested in applying that. As opposed to you, who's interested in doing something, and then you go back and see, okay, what do I need to learn to do that, right? And then you apply your thinking and logic and analysis to get. It's a means to an end, as opposed to me. The end is just to understanding it. There's nothing I want to do with it. I just want to understand it. Einstein is an INTP. Tesla, not Tesla. Was it Tesla? Yeah, Tesla was an INTP. So he was never able to capitalize on all the discoveries that he did, and and he left everything to like Edison and a few other people to basically just stow his ideas and commercialize and make a lot of money.
Those were the ENTJs.
Those are the ENTJs.
Yeah, they're the. So click on the one so they can see what these 4 are.
So they have all these types, these are the analysts. So they all have the T, the N and the T. So when you combine an N, which is intuition, with a T, which is thinking, that makes these people very good at analyzing stuff, but with different type of quirks. Okay, different type of personalities.
Yeah.
Then you get the diplomats.
Parts.
Yeah, the feeling people, and then you have the sentinels. So these people tend to be very strong with, they can read other people very readily, okay? But sometimes they cannot block it, because when people are in conflict and the atmosphere is really tense, these people cannot filter that. They just feel the whole thing, and it just impacts them, severely. As opposed to the INTPs and the INTJs, who either choose to ignore or not even perceive it in the first place. You can have a whole room and people are just about to break out and have a brawl, and then these INTPs and INTJs are like, it's okay, I don't see any problems. And then you have the explorer. So these are the people who like to, I guess, explore. And then once you get into the personality types, there are a lot of things you can look up, like the most likely crime committed by each personality type. Okay.
Put it in our neural net. Let's see what happens.
Combine it with the app from last week. Oh.
The funny thing about the personality type versus what is the most likely crime is one personality type, which is ISFJ, is most likely to be accomplice. But what crime? It doesn't mention. Because those people do not come up with their own ideas. They do not like to lead. They don't want to come up with things. They just go like, you're my best friend. Whatever you're doing, I'll help. So their crime is accomplice, just accomplice, but not accomplice to something. That was another personality type, which is even quote unquote worse, but actually better in this respect. The worst crime that type can commit is a unpaid parking ticket. As opposed to INTPs who tend to become hackers, and INTJs are murderers. Because
what was that one movie with the guy that builds the little balls that come down the train? He murders his wife. He defends himself.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of the movie.
He's a good actor. I think it's the Fava Beans guy.
Suitable for
Jobs.
as developers.
Yeah.
So you will find
Maybe
these things too.
I think it'll be NTs, right?
Yeah, the NTs are definitely have a slight advantage. Okay, but it doesn't do the MBTI or the Myers-Briggs type indicator.
Do a dash site 16.
Or MBTI.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, the best jobs for so these are for all the different types. Yeah, so NT, basically you just need NT to be there to kind of pick up programming. ENTPs are interesting because ENTPs tend to be they're even more scattered than INTP. I'm an INTP, but ENTPs are even more scattered because of the extroverted part. So one thing
what was on the previous chart? What did they say about ENTP on the previous chart?
On the previous chart? Oh, I mean in this one?
Yeah.
ENTPs would still be up there. ENTP is right here. Debaters. They like to play the devil's advocate.
Oh, they're
on everything.
Yeah, they fight everything.
Well, they're not fighting. They're really just saying, okay, but what if? That's the mode that they think is what if. They explore all the what ifs.
That's a lawyer thing.
It's kind of, but they wouldn't make very good lawyers because they lack the J part. They don't really care who's winning.
Like I said, that's a lawyer's part.
Not even their own side.
No, as long as I keep getting paid.
But
motion after motion after motion, I get paid.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you have so if you're getting into this, you can also get into the Young functional stack, which is actually more informed compared to MBTI. But there's a conversion between these two. So if you go to the Jungian your cognitive functions, the MBTI or Myers-Briggs type indicator is a kind of like a version 2 of the Jungian study of personality types. It's just easier to understand, but they're interchangeable. So with the Jungian cognitive functions, they separate a person's function into, it's a stack. There are 4 functions, on the stack. Okay, I'm gonna show you this. If you have something else to do, you can go ahead and leave the class. That's okay. This is definitely not mobile programming anymore. On the other hand,
unless you want to build a mobile personality app.
Exactly,
yes,
which is actually an interesting app because there are books to tell people how to speed read personality types. So you will be talking to someone, and then you through the conversation, through the observation, you will be able to quickly identify that person's type. Now that can be advantageous, especially in negotiations when you're buying a car from a dealership and stuff like that. You read the type of the salesperson, and then you know how to kind of work that person.
I think it's the salesperson reads the type of customer.
The salesperson
does.
The salesperson does not even need to study, because there are certain types who are really good at that type of thing, and INTPs are not very good at that. INTJs
the counselors.
Yep. Okay. So when you look at the function stack, so I'm just going to use mine as an example. I'm an INTP. So the way you do this conversion is you know that N and T are the top two functions. So you just basically say, okay, we'll write down N, T as the top functions. So that means F and S has to be the lower functions, because T is countered by F. T is thinking, F is feeling. Okay, so those two are counterparts. N is intuition, S is sensing, so they're counterparts as well. Intuition basically means your natural ability to make connections. Okay, sensing means you're relying on sensory data or experience, things they can recall from memory. That's sensing. So typically, people who are intuitive are not sensing, and people who are sensing are not intuitive. So they're counterparts of each other. Is that making any sense? So people who like extreme sport, they do not like abstract theory. Okay, they will just experience it. You will tell them, oh, this is gravity. This is 9.8, meters per second squared, and it will take you half a second to drop this, to make this drop. They would they would only listen to half of your sentence, got bored, and then just jump to experience. Oh, so that's what it feels like. Okay, so that's sensing versus intuition. And then you have the T versus the F, which is thinking versus feeling. The thinking type would basically use apply logic and apply analysis to evaluate things. So T and F are both known as judging functions, because you're using these to evaluate things. Okay, they're not input functions, they're evaluation functions.
So I would put a shelf in the corner because it makes sense to put all these things there. But the wife, which is feeling, says, "Oh, that does not feel like the right place at all.
Doesn't look right."
Yeah, this is not right. I don't care how functional it is.
Yep.
Just.
Well, yeah. So with knowing just the NT, I know my stack is going to have NT as the top two functions and FS as the lower functions. The P, so I applies to the first one. So so I applies to the what we call the dominant function. So that automatically sets up the rest. Okay, like that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that automatically sets up the IE. They have to alternate. Okay. There's no other way. They have to alternate. Now the most difficult part is the P, because with introverts the P applies to the auxiliary function, which is the second one. So whatever is a perceiving function is going to be my auxiliary instead of my dominant function. So out of the N and the T, N is perceiving, T is judging. In other words, N is how I get input from the outside world, and T is how I make decisions, how I evaluate different options. So that means this stack has to have a T over here, but that means the N has to be here. But if the N is here, the opposing function, which is S, has to be here, and then my F has to be here because it's opposing T. So this is called the MBTI notation, which is Myers-Briggs type indicator. This part here is called the Jungian functional stack. Now the functional stack, okay, this is the functional stack for a personality. So TI means I am introverted thinking, extroverted intuition, introverted sensing, and extroverted feeling. Most people in their childhood would already be using the top two functions. So that becomes their strongest abilities. So with me, my strongest ability according to the chart is introverted thinking, as opposed to extroverted thinking. The difference with INTJ is exactly the opposite. Okay, so with INTJ, I think it is NI first, and then TE, and then FI, and then SE. Okay, so they're different. So TI means I use logic to form an internal framework to explain the outside world. That's my tendency. And then NE is extroverted intuition, which means I make associations, I make links, I relate things. But the way I apply that is to come up with new things. Instead of making internal connection with things that I already know, things that I've already experienced, I explore possibilities. So that's the extroverted intuition as opposed to introverted intuition. When I'm in my 20s or 30s, I probably will start to develop this is called the tertiary function. So they are not really as strong as the first two, but you will start to develop that probably in your 20s, 30s. SI means introverted sensing, which means usually has to do with relying on memory, okay, using internal sensing. Okay, so I'm not so much I don't really care much about experience externally, but I kind of divert my sensing inward and go like, oh yeah, remember in childhood this is what I did. Okay, so SI strong people tend to use memory a lot, okay, based on past experience. But I'm not SI strong. My SI is actually just on the third place, which basically means I use it for entertainment purposes. People with an SI as the third item, basically they're called nostalgic. Okay, certain things will bring back memory of my childhood and go like, yeah, I kind of like that. But I don't use it, for working and stuff like that. That's not, what I use for that kind of thing. FE is the weakest function is called the inferior function. So as an inferior function, FE is extroverted feeling, which is the ability to tell how other people are feeling. Okay, so I can very weak, but I can still kind of sense people are not getting along and stuff like that. But I don't know how to process that, so that bothers me to no end. Babies crying bothers me to no end because I can sense the baby is in distress and go like, okay, the baby needs something. What do I do about it? I don't know. Okay, I cannot solve that problem.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Moment of silence.
Read a book. Pacifier, liquor. Okay, so INTJ, okay, using the MBTI notation. So you know that it is NT, first, and then F and I. Nope, F. Let's see, FS. There we go. So we know the general stacking, because NT is in the MBTI itself. So those are the strongest two functions, okay? And we know the I applies to the first one, applies to the dominant. So the IE part is already set up like that. So now the only part that is remaining is where is the J, what is the J telling us? With introverted personalities, the J versus the P describes the auxiliary, not the dominant function. So out of the two, the N and the T, the judging function is the thinking one. Intuition is a perceiving function, and thinking is a judging function. So this stack is already correct. N, I, T, E, F, I, and S, E is already correct. So that is the functional stack of an INTJ person. So an INTJ person has NIV in dominant. So those people tend to be able to understand things very, very quickly. There's an introverted intuition, which is which translates to being able to read something and instantly make connections between all the concepts in a very, very quick way. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I definitely. Having a conversation with me is like we're driving down the road. It's like bouncing off the signs. I'm associating everything with stories and memories, and I connect it all. That's how I keep it. That's how I keep things organized.
But the difference between an NE and an NI is being able to have deep understanding, And then NE is the ability to generate new ideas, to make new possible, to explore possibilities. That is NE. To have a deep, in-depth, insightful understanding is NI. Okay, so those two are slightly different, even though they're both intuition. By diverting it outward or inward, it gives you a different kind of spin to how you use your intuition. TE is auxiliary to INTJs. So TE is extroverted thinking, which means it's data, fact-based reasoning. Okay, so when TE people
don't give me why, give me how many.
Yeah, exactly. The facts. Okay, who did what, how many times. Okay, where's those? Who is keeping track of those numbers? Can I trust those numbers? Okay, who validated those numbers? Okay, and those are basically the driving force of TE. But the side effect of TE is because it's extroverted thinking. So people with a TE, especially within the top 2 function stack, they tend to have a tendency to change the world, to do something about the external world, as opposed to TI, which is just, I just need to understand why something happens, okay? And after I understand it, I just move on. I don't need to do anything about it. I just want to understand. TE tend to have an objective of, oh, things are not as efficient as it should be. I will make it more efficient. Okay? So they have a practical application of logical and analytical thinking, as opposed to, oh, I just need to know why. So what do you think the Buddha is? The Buddha is all about understanding. So Buddha would not be an INTJ for sure. People think the Buddha is probably an F person. I would disagree. I don't think the Buddha is a feeling person. The Buddha is probably more of a thinking person.
Especially at that time. Especially at the time when he lived.
So what would Jesus be then?
Jesus is probably a feeling person.
Definitely a feeling person.
Yep.
Sensing?
I would say sensing. Probably introverted too. Even though he has a lot of followers. The introverted versus the extroverted has nothing to do with whether you can talk in front of a whole bunch of people. I'm introverted, but yet I'm teaching, right? It has to do with how you regain your energy. Introverted people like to, hide in the office or hide in the room and just go like, okay, I'm just gonna rest and by myself and thinking about processing things, reflecting and stuff like that, to regain that energy. Extroverted people, when they feel down and lack of energy, they go to the bar. The more stranger, the better. That's how they
conversations with them.
Yeah, and enjoy conversations.
Because I when I'm out here by myself, I hang out a lot by the camper and I'm working on my apps and doing my homework and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I do have to go out and see somebody. But it doesn't mean I necessarily talk to them. I'm more likely to talk to somebody standing in the line at Starbucks.
And you have that's an extroverted tendency.
Well, I just.
But you may not be like introverted all the way. You may be like 51% introverted, 49% extroverted, right?
I fight it really hard. I fight it.
Yeah. So you don't have to be like leaning all the way one way. FI is introverted feeling, which means those people tend to have a strong sense of their own values. Okay, I value efficiency. I value independence, and so on and so forth, as opposed to sensing the values of other people, which is FE. And then SE is extroverted sensing. So basically sensing out of your 5 senses and stuff like that, and not directed to memory, that sort of thing. But it is it's an inferior function, which means it is at the bottom of the stack. You don't use it very often. So people with an SE, all the way up in the stack, those people would not, they're very comfort oriented, because anything that is cold, uncomfortable, texture doesn't feel right, those people would bother those people. And SE is not even on my stack, so I don't really care. when I was in college, I would wear my jeans with belts and my keys and also my wallet in the pockets, and I would go to sleep like that. Okay, because in the morning I would wake up, brush my teeth, and ready to go out of the door. I just felt that, hey, I'm ready to go. I mean, that's good. But it did not, make me uncomfortable at all. And then other people look at me and go like, how could you sleep with keys in your pocket and your wallet and stuff like that? So that's a functional stack kind of thing. I mean, it is kind of it can be a fun topic, but I think at the same time, you might find it useful because it actually helps to identify what you're really good at. Yep, go ahead.
No, it's really good. I've never seen the correlation, but I like the. So for the INTJ and when you converted it to the MBTI, is it the same conversion all the time, or is it?
Yes, it is the same conversion all the time. Give me another personality type. I can use it as an example.
I don't know, an ESFP.
ESFJ or ESFP?
P.
P? Okay. So if the MBTI is ESFP, one thing we know for sure is SF are on the top two. So that means T and N are the bottom two. Okay, that's just just looking at the middle two characters. Okay. And then the next thing we know is the E always applies to the dominant function. So we know the dominant is an E.
Where you got that.
And then the EI, they have to alternate just like that. So the last one is for extroverted people, whether they're perceiving or judging, the P and the J applies to the dominant function. So the dominant function has to be a perceiving function. And in this case, sensing is perceiving, so this stack is already correct. So we have S, E, F, I, T, E, and N, I. And from this particular stack, you can sort of just kind of look at this and go like, these people are extroverted sensing, dominant. So these people would probably like to experience new things. Okay, like windsurfing one day, and then go scuba diving the next day, and then go jump off an airplane the next day. Because those are all extroverted sensing thing. Okay, that keeps them occupied. And FI being the second one means they are pretty aware of their own values. Okay, so they would push their own values a little bit more than people with FE, for instance. Okay. And then you have TE being tertiary, extroverted thinking is a tertiary function, and then NI is as a inferior function.
So these are point break.
Well, let's find out, because you can go back to these pages, ESFP, and find out how they would be. ESFP right there. Entertainers. Spontaneous, energetic, enthusiastic people. Life is never boring. So when you click it, you will see strengths and weaknesses. I usually just jump to strengths and weaknesses because it's point-based, it's easier to read for me. So ESFPs are bold, aren't known for holding back, wanting to experience everything there is. Well, okay, remember what I said a little bit earlier. People with the ESFP personality type don't mind stepping out of their comfort zone when no one else is willing. Original, tradition, and expectations are secondary to ESFPs. And if a consideration at all, ESFP personalities love to experiment with new styles and constantly finding new ways to stick out in the crowd. The reason why they want to stick out in the crowd is because of the FI. Their introverted feeling, they want to project their own values and let people know about those. Aesthetic and showmanship. Not stopping at mere outfits, ESFPs inject artistic creativity into their words and actions because they know their own values. You cannot do this unless you know your own values. Okay? Every day is a performance, and ESFPs love to put on a show because that gives them a chance to express what they know about themselves. Observant with all the focus on the here and now, on doing and acting, it makes sense that these are natural when it comes to noticing real tangible things. because the SE is also making people grounded. Because you're sensing, right? You're placing your attention to the skin, what you're feeling, temperature-wise, wind-wise, what you're seeing, what you're smelling, what you're hearing, what you're tasting. So these people tend to be very grounded because they're always living in reality, which will make calculus very difficult for these people. Especially, yeah, go ahead.
It looks like this is a large part of our population.
Oh, there are other types that are a large part too. Excellent people skill and so on. Okay, so you can actually look up population percentage MBTI, and there are very neat tables for this sort of thing. And you can see that they're definitely not even. The rarest types, INTJs are rare, but I think INFJs are even more rare. INFJs are confident. They are only 1% of the whole population. But when you divide 100% by 16, you should get 6 point something percent, right? So the average should be 6 point something percent. And then you have some way over representation, like ESTJ, 13%.
Those are the bosses.
Those are the overseers, your foremen.
Too many bosses.
Too many bosses.
Way
not,
too many bosses.
Not enough peons, right? But then you also see there's a skew of based on gender, because 60% of male versus 10% of female. Okay, so there's a gender bias as well. With INTP, there's a gender bias, a heavy gender bias of 4% of male and then only 1% of female. So even though overall it's only 2.5%, which is somewhat rare, it is much more rare if it's a female, because it's only 1% of all the females.
I'm never gonna find a girl like me.
Which may not be a bad
Look at that.
thing.
What is? Move the mouse. It's like 0. What?
0.5%. 0.5%.
No wonder nobody understands me.
That really accounts for a lot of things. If you grew up, saying everybody else is different from me, and they never really know, how I think and how I do things, and they all do things differently, they value different things, it probably had to do with this distribution. So your usual football jocks will find a lot of buddies because there's a whole lot of them, right? 16%, which means 1/6 of all males fall into the overseer category. And then with females, 17% fall into the category of supporters. Now, is it because of culture, or is it because of what? We don't know. Okay, we don't know the correlation. Okay, but here's the percentage breakdown.
Excuse me, can I get another water?
I can show you the map where the water is. That's what an INTP would do. And then you have ISFJ, which has 10%, twice as many. Well, it's about the same percentage, more than twice.
I guess this is really intense, because this tells you if you want a good wife, I mean, don't pick the defender or the overseer, yeah.
Well, it depends on your personality. If you need someone to rule, then
Yeah, if you need someone to rule you, you can. There's 10% of them, but there's 17% just built there to support.
Well, but there's a downside to there's a downside to supporters too, because their main function is sensing and feeling. It's really hard to talk and understand each other.
Why are your socks on the floor? I can just feel those socks. Because I'm ready to put them on my feet.
Yeah, because the way you communicate has to do with your function too. The thinking type talking to the feeling type can be very difficult because they focus on different things. Okay, and sometimes it sends the wrong message across, because the thinking type will keep focusing on the facts, logical stuff and whatnot, and then the feeling type would think that you're being cold, you're ignoring what they are feeling. but you're not really ignoring, the anti-type is not really ignoring what the feeling type is feeling. The anti-type just does not experience that feeling at all. In other words, you see a rainbow and you're trying to describe to a dog and say, oh, look at all these colors and whatnot. The dog look at the rainbow and go like, I see shades of gray and that's about it. What do you mean by red and purple and green? I don't see it at all. Look at the contrast of the hues and whatnot. I see gray.
The cat just doesn't care.
Yep, exactly. The cat doesn't care. But this is really interesting. But they do have, special pair-ups, that are kind of super compatible, because INTP is not necessarily compatible with INTP, for friendship or as partner and whatnot. Okay, even though they can talk to each other and they understand each other really well because they focus on the same thing, doesn't mean that they can, work together and live together, as a
You're missing
unit.
the other half of yin and yang.
Yep, exactly,
Yeah,
the
because
yin yang thing.
It becomes all white.
So for INTP, there's a, if you look up MBTI golden pair, okay, PAIR and not PEAR, there's actually pictures of that too. So you can see there are, so this is what they call the golden pair, which is INTP and INFJ. So they only share the I and N, but the other two are exact opposites, because they complement each other. So whatever your personality type is, it does not mean that you want a spouse of exactly the same type, because sometimes it actually works against you. When people are of the same type. Can you see two overseers being spouses?
So I need someone that.
That's
so
why
I
we
need
have
to be
divorce
another
attorneys.
1%er. So I need another 1%er that's confident. Because you're gonna be criticized constantly. No, I'm just kidding.
Yep.
Or it's gonna feel like criticism, so you're gonna have to be confident. Because all I'm doing is really saying this could be better. I'm not saying you did it wrong.
Yes, but the other
But
person may see it differently.
Yeah, they see that. They feel that. They feel, oh my gosh, it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
No, but there's a lesson here. We could be better next time.
Yep.
Because they need someone that's confident. Wow.
Yep. So this is
1.5% of them.
But this is really kind of interesting, at the breakdown, and then when you start to kind of look into it, by reading articles about it and whatnot, then you will find out that a lot of times, the projection is actually quite correct. Okay, it doesn't apply to everybody because we are all individuals, right? So within INTPs, there's a whole spectrum of people with INTP based on how you grew up, how you were brought up, your personal experience and stuff like that. So it is just an overall view of how people are have different traits, but it doesn't hurt to understand this part, this kind of stuff.
Well, along with this, then obviously we can build eHarmony. So my question would be, I don't know anything about graph networks. But on one of these ancillary topics, can you share what you know about graph networks?
Graph
Yeah,
networks.
social graph networking. Uh-oh.
Well, I'm only using this to understand what is the context of that. Is that a social graph?
Those guys.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, have you ever played with any of those algorithms?
No, but let me just read it and try to understand what it is.
Friend of a friend. Friend of a friend and weights, how many friends are related to this friend.
Okay, gotcha.
It's that
Gotcha.
kind of a knowledge thing. And then it's like, what kind of a data structure? And that's way beyond 360.
Well, the data structure is easy because it's still a graph. So when you're working with a graph, you have the vertices that are representing
Random
people,
B trees or-
and then you have relations, connecting the people. And each relation only has two people, but it's symmetric because I'm assuming this is symmetric. Like you consider somebody to be a friend, and that person would
Well,
do the
if you think
reverse.
about the government, you sent a message to this person.
Mhm.
They may not send one back.
Okay.
So yeah, you can have a two-way connection.
Then that makes
You're
it
in my
a-
address book, but I'm not in yours.
Okay, fine. That makes it a directed graph instead of a non-directed graph, which means that the edges are directed. It only goes in one direction. So there are well-known algorithms for analyzing this type of graphs, finding the optimal path and all kinds of stuff like that. But the value of a social graph is for manipulation of stuff. Okay, because you want to find the nexus of these graphs, people with a lot of outgoing edges, so that if you can influence those people, then you can influence as a result many people who are connected to those people. And I would assume that these might have something to do with the MBTI as well. Certain personality types tend to be the nexus of these graphs, and certain people tend to be outlying or not connected well with the rest.
Yeah, there'd be several of them. I mean, if you look at eHarmony, after you did the MBTI to determine it, you got your golden pair, which I guess is the only thing you'd want to pitch if you had enough people, right? I mean, you'd only pitch your golden pairs, and then you'd have to then break it down to other social cultures and vegetarian lifestyles, and other types of things, and then you can say, wow, these people might be compatible with each other. And I think this would be the crux of finding it.
Aha.
And I know that they've done a lot of work in this stuff, but
Who did a lot of work?
oh, Facebook.
Facebook? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think this is this is.
Well, Facebook
and then-
has all the data to begin with.
Well, they continued it, but I think it's also Google, because they were using all the different, to do their page ranks, they used number of people that were
Yep.
linking to your site.
Yep.
So they were already looking for the vertices.
But this is also really useful when you want to get into the industry of fake news as an occupation. Because that's how fake news can gain traction and actually start to change something in the real world. Because at the end of the election, during the most critical moments of an election, it can be a state election, can be a local election, can be a national presidential election. It doesn't even matter. But based on the time frame, if you can at the most critical time, effectively spew out fake news to steer people in one direction or the other direction, you can change the outcome of that particular election. So that is what we're going to see from here on, because we have already shown, the data has already shown the effectiveness of fake news. Okay, so we can.
Yeah, it's been fake for a long time, I think. Because I've actually been candidate to a few things that I've seen in the paper. Witnessed it, saw it, been there, been a part of it, and the way it's reported was always just kind of more convenient to the way they wanted to tell the story than
Right.
the real truth of the matter.
But in terms of these, what I call fake news has no reality basis.
Yeah, it's just deliberate to produce an outcome.
Yes. And it is an industry, okay? It's an industry for two purposes. One is for political reasons, okay? Which is clearly, that's one reason to do it. But the second reason is for financial reasons. So if you can fake, abcnews.com, okay, with 2 S at the end instead of 1, okay? And then you find writers to write some sensational news, like Trump used to be a girl, okay? And here's a picture of Trump, when he was 3 years old as a girl, okay? Completely sensational. And then you have to find the right place to plant that piece of news in Facebook, okay? To get the kind of people who would just buy it without really researching it and finding out the truthfulness. So the social graph now becomes really useful, because now you can, if you know the social graph to begin with, you can plant that fake news, of these nexes, of what these nexes will tend to read, and as a result, you have the most effective way of spreading, the fake news and achieving, what the fake news is supposed to achieve. But the financial gain, regardless of the political reasons, is people would then go to abcnews.com and go like, oh, okay, I can see it is actually real without actually checking the URL, right? But then when you have advertisements, okay, when people click on those advertisements, then you still get money. And that's how people make money. They caught a person, NPR caught a person in Arizona who was doing fake news, not for political reasons. Now he claimed that it is for political reasons because he wanted to make fun of the alt-right, but he also admitted that all these fake news sites was making a lot of money. He was hiring 8 writers to generate fake news. So this is an industry, okay? Fake news is now an industry. Now you can argue that this thing has been around for a long time, distorting news or posting something that is not entirely true. But social media social media is one
I
thing.
mean, what's the movie, Wag the Dog?
Yep.
I mean, that was fake news, right?
Wag the Dog itself is a movie, it's fictional.
Yeah, I mean, but the whole movie was they needed, or what is it? No, I guess it wasn't Charlie Wilson's war. But, I mean, Wag the Dog, they were going through the presidential thing. They decided they needed a war, so they crafted a war, and it's all the news.
Mhm.
You know, the news is covered by it. The other piece of fake news I would say is MH370.
The what?
MH370.
MH
370.
370.
The plane that disappeared.
Oh.
I think if you were doing oil and gas exploration and you detected a large interstellar device at the bottom of the Red Sea, how would you go about extracting it?
Blow it up.
No, you first of all, the world couldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
The world couldn't know. That would just be awful. That would just shake our world to the core. But we'd still want the device. So we'd follow this little bluefin diving machine day in and day out. This one little thing. All these ships are mobilized, but we're following on the news. And then, what was really odd, a little Korean cruise liner, I think, capsized at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we interrupt the coverage of MH370 to report that, you know, all these Korean kids have probably died in this boat. Okay, great. Return back to this little thing floating around. Oh, it aborted its mission again. It returned, and, you know, it hasn't reached depth yet, blah, blah, blah. You remember how bad the news was? And yet they had ships mobilized all over the Red Sea. Or the Indian Ocean, sorry.
Is that it?
Yeah. There's no plane. We've still never found it. It's a year and a half later. You remember when it disappeared?
Yeah.
There's no plane. You know, you hire a bunch of actors and act, oh my gosh, I lost my loved ones, da 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 da. You know, and we all believe it.
Mm-hmm.
We just bought it hook, line, and sinker. But then they could mobilize and they could do things like I know they did it back in the desert.
I see what
too.
you mean. They're using an excuse.
They did it in the desert too. They would build a building or something, and at the same time, what they're really doing is building this massive underground structure.